Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are dissecting a concept that, well, it dominates our adult lives, yet often escapes rigorous definition: career development. When we think about a career, I think most of us have a very specific, almost cinematic image in our heads. It's a ladder. You start at the bottom, you work hard, you get a promotion, a corner office, and eventually you retire with a gold watch. But when you actually strip away the Hollywood narrative and you look at the mechanics of how work functions, that ladder starts to look a lot less stable.
Well, I'd argue for many people, the latter is actually missing rungs or it's leaning against the wrong wall entirely. I mean, we're stuck in this tension between two very different realities. On one side, you have the definition of career development as the evolution of occupational status, which is that external, visible climb you just described. But on the other side, there is a much messier, more, human definition, a process to align personal needs for physical or psychological fulfillment.
Right, and that sets up the battleground for today. Is the primary function of a career to achieve vertical progression and specialized mastery within a structure, what we might call the organizational or linear view, or is it a fluid process of self-realization and value alignment, the individual or spiral view?
Essentially, are we building a resume or are we building a life?
I'm going to take the hardline stance here. We are building a functional society, and that requires structure. I'll be representing the position that career development is best understood through the lens of advancement, stability, and organizational strategy. The steady state and linear paths aren't just old-fashioned. I think they are the necessary frameworks for expertise and for institutional success.
And I'm going to push back on that. I believe career development is fundamentally about individual adaptation. Concepts like spiral paths, transitory roles, and the whole phenomenon of quiet ambition, these things better reflect the reality of the total encompassment of an individual's work life. The organization is just the backdrop, the person is the point.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of this, because the definitions here, they aren't just academic. They dictate how we spend 40 hours a week. The classic model, and the one I think holds the most water, is the steady-state career.
The one job for life model?
Well, it's not just one job. It's one commitment. Think about the example of a medical professional. You go to medical school, you do your residency, and you work as a doctor until you retire. You are acquiring a specific skill set and becoming highly specialized. Now, imagine if that doctor decided to spiral into, graphic design or fast food management in their 40s. We would lose that depth of expertise. Society relies on people picking a lane and staying in it to master these complex fields.
I don't think anyone is arguing against heart surgeons knowing what they're doing, but you are cherry-picking the most rigid, high-stakes example to justify a model that just doesn't fit most people.
Okay, fair enough. Let's look at the broader engine of the economy then. The linear career. This is what most corporate structures are built on. You move vertically. Each new role brings increased responsibility and decision-making authority. This isn't just about ego or a bigger paycheck. It's about strategic management. Organizations use things like training, job rotation, transfers, all to groom leaders. If everyone is just following their bliss, who learns how to run the department? Who learns to manage the budget?
But see, you're framing following your bliss as if it's frivolous. I'm talking about spiral careers, which is a legitimate developmental model. In a spiral career, you aren't just climbing up, you're moving across. You hold a role, you develop a specific competency, and then you take that competency into a new context. You aren't learning to command and control, you're learning to adapt and to integrate.
But does that serve the institution?
It serves the work. Look at the concept of the transitory career. The example often cited is someone moving from being a fast food worker to a bookkeeping role. To you, that looks like a restart. It looks like they fell off the ladder. But from the adaptive perspective, that is a massive developmental leap. They are moving from a high-paced physical service environment to a detail-oriented analytical one. They are expanding their total encompassment of work experiences.
Total encompassment sounds lovely, but let's be real about what that transition feels like. It feels like instability. If I'm that worker and I'm jumping from fry cook to junior bookkeeper, I have zero seniority. I have zero decision-making authority. I am, perpetually at the bottom of someone else's pyramid. The linear model offers protection. It offers a trajectory where your past effort compounds into future authority.
It offers protection if the organization decides to keep you. But that's the trap, isn't it? You're trading your agency for a promise of stability that might not exist. The transitory or spiral path is scary, yes, because it requires constant reinvention. But it aligns with the reality that life isn't linear. Socio-demographic factors, things like age, gender, race, they often force people to adapt, change, or abandon career paths. If your only definition of success is up, then anyone who has to step sideways to care for a sick parent or because of a layoff is by that definition a failure.
That's a fair point about the rigidity of the definition. But I want to drill down on this idea of competence. You mentioned that spiral careers build skills. I would argue they build a collection of surface-level traits, whereas the linear path builds deep structural competence.
How so?
Well, look at what higher-level management positions actually entail. It's not just doing the work, it's resource allocation, planning, controlling, leading, and organizing. You cannot learn how to allocate resources for a 1,000-person division by spiraling through individual contributor roles. You learn that by being given authority, screwing it up, and being given more authority. The linear career is a crucible for leadership.
I'd argue it's a crucible for bureaucracy. You're becoming an expert in the internal politics of an organization. A spiral careerist, someone who has been a teacher, then a project manager, then a consultant, they understand how to solve problems from multiple angles. They have cross-pollinated their skills. They might not be experts in controlling, but they are experts in connecting.
Connecting is valuable, sure, but organizations operate on retention. The material makes it very clear. Managers nurture work environments to influence employee retention. If the workforce is entirely made up of spiral careerists who are just going to leave in 2 years to pursue their next psychological fulfillment, how do you build a long-term strategy? You can't.
You're assuming that retention is the employee's problem. It's not. It's the company's problem. The individual's responsibility is self-awareness. The planning process requires being self-aware of personal needs. If my need is growth and your company offers stagnation, I should leave. That's not a betrayal. That's development.
And that attitude brings us directly to a concept that I find frankly alarming: quiet ambition.
I had a feeling this would trigger the rigorous, structured side of you.
It absolutely does. Quiet ambition is defined as a mindset where individuals prioritize personal values and life goals over organizational advancement or financial outcomes. Now, on a human level, I get it. We all want work-life balance. But from a career development standpoint, this sounds like throwing in the towel. If you aren't striving for advancement or financial growth, which are the objective measures of value creation, are you really developing or are you just coasting?
You're conflating development with conquest. Quiet ambition isn't about doing nothing. It's about redefining what the target is. If the definition of career development includes aligning with psychological fulfillment, which it does, then quiet ambition is a strategic choice.
Strategic? How?
Because it acknowledges the cost of that linear climb. We aren't machines. The environment affects us. The data shows that work-life balance is a massive factor in decision-making. If I choose quiet ambition, I am deciding that my mental health or my family is the metric I want to maximize, rather than my job title. That takes a tremendous amount of maturity. It's a rejection of the idea that more always equals better.
Or it's a rejection of the economic reality of the occupational role. We are paid to perform a function. The text discusses strategic management and long-term careers leading to retirement. That implies you need to maximize your footprint to secure your future. Quiet ambition feels like a luxury belief. It's easy to say you don't care about financial outcomes until you need to pay for that retirement.
But financial outcomes and climbing the corporate ladder are not the same thing anymore. You can have a very successful, financially stable spiral career without ever wanting to be a vice president. You can be a specialist, a consultant, a creator. Quiet ambition is just saying, I don't need to rule the world to be happy in it.
Maybe. But let's look at how people are actually navigating this brave new world of individual choice. Because they aren't just meditating on their values, they are using tools. And this brings us to the role of technology. specifically large language models, or AI.
Ah, this is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. And I think the way people use AI actually proves my point about the dominance of structure. What is the primary use case mentioned? Resume tailoring. People are using these massive supercomputers to rewrite their life stories, to emphasize role-specific experience for targeted positions.
Right.
Think about the psychology there. They aren't asking the AI to help them create a new role or redefine the industry. They are asking the AI, how do I fit myself into this box so the HR algorithm accepts me? They are desperate to align with these strategic organizational objectives I mentioned earlier. The structure is still the king. The individual is just using better camouflage.
That is such a cynical take. I see the complete opposite. Think about who is using these tools. The material points out that AI assists those who lack access to informal networks or insider knowledge.
The outsiders.
The people who didn't go to the Ivy League. The people who don't have an uncle in the C-suite. Historically, the linear and steady-state paths were gated communities. You needed a mentor to tell you the unwritten rules. Now an LLM gives you that insider knowledge instantly. It levels the playing field.
It gets you past the first gate, sure.
It empowers you to steer your longer-term career development pathways independently. You don't have to wait for your manager to nominate you for a training program. You can ask the AI, what skills do I need to move from marketing to data science? And it gives you a curriculum. That is the ultimate act of individual agency. It bypasses the organizational gatekeepers entirely.
It bypasses the gatekeeper, but it still leads you to the gate. You're still trying to get hired by the institution. But let's pivot to something even more fundamental than technology. Let's talk about who we are as people. Is career choice a free-for-all, or is it determined by our nature?
You're talking about the Holland Codes.
I am. John L. Holland's typology. It's been around for decades for a reason. It categorizes people into types: investigative, realistic, artistic, social, enterprising, conventional. And the research says these personality traits influence career choice and progression.
It's useful framework, sure.
It's more than useful, it's deterministic. If you are an investigative type, you are going to be miserable in an enterprising sales role. This supports the idea that careers should be stable and role-specific. You need to find the box that fits your shape and stay there. It argues against this fluid, spiral idea where anyone can be anything. We have natural inclinations.
We have inclinations, yes, but we also have lives. And this is where the linear model completely breaks down for what, half the population? The text immediately complicates Holland's clean little boxes by bringing in social identity.
You mean demographics?
I mean reality. Look at the research on gender. It notes that men often emphasize income growth and advancement, but women, often because society dumps the caregiving burden on them, may prioritize balancing work and caregiving.
Which leads to different career outcomes.
It leads to the necessity of the spiral path. If a woman is on a strict linear track, up or out, and she needs to take 2 years to care for a child or an aging parent, the linear model treats her as a failure. She has stepped off. But the adaptive view says, okay, she is adapting to a life circumstance. She can pick up a different strand later.
But that adaptation has a cost. The text links that male focus on career advancement directly to income growth. The linear path is the path to wealth. If we embrace the spiral model because it feels more inclusive, are we actually condemning people to lower economic outcomes?
We might be, but are we measuring wealth in dollars or in sanity? If I spiral and make 20% less money, but I can actually pick my kids up from school and I'm not burning out, have I lost? The linear view says yes. The individual view says I've won.
And that is the crux of the disagreement. I look at the economy and I see a machine that needs parts to function reliably. We need the steady-state experts to keep the lights on and the surgery safe. We need the linear managers to make the hard decisions about resource allocation. The organization provides the training and development, the job rotation, the infrastructure that makes work possible. Without that scaffolding, we are all just individuals drifting in a vacuum.
Back So they are using AI to navigate their own paths, they are adopting quiet ambition to protect their energy, and they are moving through transitory and spiral careers to build a life that actually fits them. The organization is just a tool the individual uses, not the other way around.
I suppose, in the end, we are both right. Career development is defined as a process. It's not a destination. It's a constant negotiation between the individual versus organizational needs.
Exactly. Sometimes you need the latter, and sometimes you need the parachute. The key is knowing which one you're grabbing and why.
A fair conclusion. It is a tension that I suspect will continue as long as people go to work. Thank you for joining me to hammer this out.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners. We hope this helps you look at your own career, whether it's a line, a spiral, or something in between, with a little more clarity. Until next time,